Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, genders of all ages, welcome to episode 4 of Alive on 1, the Transformers.cards podcast. I am your host, the God King, Lord Zero, and as usual, I have Hawkhammer here with me.
You didn't motion for my entrance. How was I supposed to know? But yeah, anyways, if you are joining us for the first time, this is our monthly show where we talk about stuff that's going on in the community, behind the scenes, and whatever soapboxes I decide to get on every once in a while. But there will be none this week, most likely, I hope.
No promises. This episode, we have the Season 3 Encounter 1 results with a big reveal afterwards. Here to talk about it with us, though, is Wheeljank, one of our top developers and biggest testers. How you doing, Wheeljank?
I'm doing well. How are you guys?
Hanging in there. Hanging in there.
Currently in a dessert coma, but I'm sure I'll get over that by the end of the episode.
Keep on keeping on.
We're going to jump straight into talking about Season 3 Encounter 1 Odd Squad. It was, to brag a little, it's my first encounter I've ever won.
Congratulations.
He's bragging about his win.
I mean, that's the minimum of my ego.
I don't know. I just wanted to be a heckler of some description. So, starting things off, of course, we should probably talk about what was going on here. It was called Odd Squad because you only got all the odd-numbered waves. So, 1, 3, 5, 7, 9, plus all the mini-sets associated with them, which I think would have meant the Autobot starter, Metroplex, the Blaster vs. Soundwave deck, the Fort Max promos, and then Scorponok and Bruticus as well. So, still a decent amount of stuff in the format overall, but you do lose a pretty decent amount of options as well. So it was an interesting thing to try and plan for.
Yeah, on last month's episode, we kind of went over a lot of the cards that wouldn't be allowed. One of the big ones we kind of failed to mention, though, that played a big role was Bashing Shield.
Did we seriously not mention that last month?
We didn't mention Bashing Shield.
How did nobody...
That would be the first one to mention.
Did
anybody call us out in the comments on that one?
Nope.
What?
But yeah, that's
no one else realized it either.
That is.
How did everybody miss that?
Biggest card probably out that we missed in the whole game.
I guess so, but ignoring that little snafu on our part, just completely forgetting things. Then again, we're TCG players. We don't exactly claim to know a whole lot. In terms of what was showing up in the decks, there were 11 participants this time. Going down the list, you had Zero, who was on Scorponok, so a Titan won an event. I know Ozzy's probably a little salty. Well, actually, no. Wait, no. Metroplex won the OI. What am I saying? I was about to say Ozzy's probably salty. It wasn't Metroplex the first Titan to win, but I completely forgot about the OI.
And the Beta Bash.
Oh my god.
And you actually won by beating another Titan, didn't you, Zero?
Yeah. Titan versus Titan finals.
Yeah, so second place was Naga on Fort Max, and place tie for me and Evil Gem. I was on Double Primes because, frankly, I couldn't think of anything better. And Evil Gem was on Orange Sky Shadow. He's been on a bit of a streak with that as of late, and is proving that Sky Shadow still can do some damage in the format, even if this was a different format compared to normal. But hey, Sky Shadow's still a good card. Fifth place was Steven. What was he on again?
He was on 3 White Cards, I believe.
Yeah.
Tracks.
Yeah, Tracks,
Cliffjumper, and Windcharger.
Yeah, Now I remember, because I remember getting blitzed by Windcharger for some ludicrous amounts, despite the fact I was playing a blue deck. Anyways, GN, what was he on?
Tidal Wave.
Yes, Tidal Wave.
Oh, right. I forgot about that.
I haven't seen that in a tournament in literally forever.
I don't think he's been in a tournament at all, aside from like maybe a beta event for Wave 8 because of that oppress strat he got in the set, but I don't remember.
Yeah.
Ozzy played him in the Big Robots fight event, I think.
Oh,
okay,
that's
yes,
right.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
We haven't seen him in an encounter then.
Yep.
Speaking of Ozzy, what was he on again?
He was on the Omnibots.
Oh, that's right. I played most of these people, and how did I forget?
Which it was delightful to see Omnibots.
Honestly, like it was terrifying. Just because of the fact that you got that opening game blitz. Though admittedly, I will admit this right now, I only won that in 2 games because of some absolutely ludicrous draws in game 2, because I had a Battlefield report set, I flipped it on the second to last turn. It drew Brainstorm, Plasma Burst, then did my defense flips, and then drew Plasma Burst for turn. Was able to shoot down, I think it was Camshaft alive at the time. And then I managed to blitz Overdrive, or whatever his name is, for like 7 on the crackback with Nemesis. So that should have gone to a third game, but just some insane draws on my end and kind of ended it prematurely.
And then we had Wheeljink on Bugs.
Okay, so you were on Bugs.
No, I wasn't. I was on 3-White Shockwave.
Oh, that's right. 3
Wait, say that
Wave
again?
1 Shockwave. I don't think anyone was on Bugs this event.
Why did I feel like I played... I'm confusing with a different game I played outside of, just during the tournament, that's why. Ignore me.
Okay, so then, anyways, continuing down the list, Botch the Crab was on 5-wide cassettes, if I recall correctly.
Yeah, that was a different C.
It didn't make the top cut, but that deck has a lot of teeth to it, and I have a feeling it might be getting some additional support at some point in the near future.
It was really close to top cut,
potential.
Too.
So, yeah, again, fits with the general kind of trend right now of wide decks, but the stealth shenanigans are just unmatched in that.
Yeah.
Sandman, what was he on?
Ultra Magnus and RC.
Wait, which RC?
Wave 1.
Wave 1.
Okay, wait. How does the math work out there?
A lot of extra stars.
Yes,
playing Magnus armors and I think heroic team ups.
Yeah, he had 3 Magnus armors.
Heroic team up. Yeah,
2 copies of the Touch. And Impervious.
That would make sense. And then lastly, Black Knight was on a more typical 3-wide cards build using Bumblebee. Wait, I say typical, but then I noticed there's no Cliff Jumper in it. It's a Legendary Bee, Wave 1 Prowl, Wave 1 Wheeljack. Still just a lot of firepower in general.
It's pretty standard.
Though he was playing more of a mixed build, weirdly enough.
Yeah, the mix pip makes it a bit different too, I think.
Yeah. So overall, decent amount of things showing up, but again, no bashing shield. Well, actually, now that I look at it, a lot of defensive decks were still doing pretty decently, so I shouldn't immediately say that. But Scorponok taking the top slot, that was fun to see again. He's a bit of a goofy character in terms of he just gets a lot of free stuff, but he's a fun time. And
100%
on your soapbox about he's the greatest character in the game, and you will not hear any arguments otherwise.
No, he's not the greatest. My favorite character in the game. 100% the whole reason I won is no bashing shield. I don't feel like most players brought enough upgrade hate.
Yeah, that's kind of been always a thing I've noticed in events, but in this one, the lack of bashing shield, I think, definitely had an impact on that. Yeah. I know when I was building my deck and I had to take out my bashing shields, I just ended up replacing them with drill arms because, I mean, it's a good card. So I was at least of the mind to maintain the same amount of upgrade hate I usually end up playing, but again, to each his own, and yeah.
If I go first as Scorp, I have a 50% chance of flipping one of my 6 armors on my first attack and equipping it right then and there. Right. And the armor usually stays on the entire game.
Plus of the fact that you have to, if you go first in that scenario, your opponent only gets 1 card on their turn 1, and they're already sitting on the back foot because they have to decide, am I just going to try to blitz through this? Am I going to remove it and not be able to, put a grenade launcher or something down? What am I going to do? And that's like where a card like OPBL or like a Brainstorm or something comes in clutch, just to be able to essentially get around certain rules and try to manipulate the game state a little bit to where it's a bit more in your favor. But again, those are very situational.
A lot of people tend to put in 1 or 2 bashing shields and say their removal's done, but no such luck this event.
I have learned the hard way that, generally speaking, you do want to play at least 1 upgrade-based removal piece and 1 action-based removal, or action removal and 1 upgrade removal. For me, it's usually bashing shield and either ramming speed or vaporize. Maybe impetuous stand in certain situations where I need to bulk out my offensive slots a bit more, but those are few and far between with the decks that I tend to play. So anyway, so that was the overall rankings. Going over what happened in the top 8, a lot of upsets, because Evil Gem taking down Wheeljank, and Zero taking down Steven Moss. I had legitimately double take that the Steven versus Zero result. I'm like, wait, what? Steven's out already? What?
See, I double taked at myself versus Evil Gem because he beat me 2-0 in group stage.
Oh yeah. So
wow.
So yeah, a major.
Did you approach that matchup differently at all, or?
A little bit. So first game, I got really kind of lucky. On first attack, I equipped a Stinger, and then on my second attack, I went into Anchor Plane and got him to 7. Then second attack, I put my Stinger on to bring him to 9. Attacked in, triggered Claws to make Sky Shadow form, and then kill Sky Shadow on my second attack.
Heads up plays, gotta love them.
It's a very good opener.
Yeah.
On the other side of the bracket, it was Naga versus GN. Naga won that one 2-0. Turns out Fort Max does well versus wide teams. Who'd have thunk it? And then I 2-0 to Ozzy, so Double Prime's beating Omnibots. For a 2-0, again, aside from the double Plasma Burst shenanigans at the end, that was a very thinky match, just trying to figure out, okay, how do I just disassemble everything on his side of the board in order to get back in the game after being at a card play disadvantage pretty much from the start because of the way Omnibots work. So that was a lot of fun. And then as Z alluded to in the semifinals, he managed to win over Evil Gem 2-1. That was a really good match. Naga then 2-1 me, and the only reason I won game 2 in that set was because Bellicosity and Hostilities back-to-back, which Fort Max doesn't exactly like that. And then in the finals, Naga admitted this to me beforehand, like he was scared, just completely scared of Scorponok, and that fear ended up being proven correct with a 2-0 win for Zero, making him the first champion of the season.
Yeah, and again, against Naga, it was, again, lack of upgrade removal and Hollow Matter. I got Hollow Matter on turn 1 or 2 in both games, and my previous games with him as well.
Right, and because of the fact that you're 1 wide, Hollow Matter is uniquely pretty much a hard counter to Fort Max. Like, every other deck, you got to get multiple down or be playing something like Motor Master in order to brunt the bulk of that firepower. But if you're playing 1 wide, Hollow Matter is just a complete silver bullet against it. So that was a unique advantage that you had going into that match.
Yeah. And in our previous match, it was really funny because we both would get Vampark up early. So it was just like a healing match between Titans.
Yeah. So, and then in terms of like what ended up being difficult, in terms of it being odds only, like we've talked about already a couple of times, like upgrade removal definitely was lacking overall in the format because people weren't just able to pack bashing shields. So that was definitely a challenge that we had to all keep an eye on. I noticed a couple more brainstorms floating around. No particular reason probably for that, just something I noticed. Looking at the rest of the statistics, Grenade Launcher, unsurprisingly, still up there. Leap into Battle, still up there. And Hostilities was all over the place. Bellicosity was all over the place. Force Field making a fairly strong showing for the first time in ages. So that was fun to see. But then again,
probably because of the lack of Bashing Shield.
Yeah, Force Field's so good when it's not easily removed.
Yeah, Drill Arms also kind of acting as a proxy for Bashing Shield. Not recoverable, obviously, but still a pretty decent card. And then looking at the top 8, Precision Fire coming in hot. I'm just looking if there's any other weird nonsense.
I mean, the nice thing about, like, you said Precision Fire came in hot, same with Escape Capsule, all those are still only in 3 of the decks. There is no repeat characters at all.
Really? Oh yeah, they're all ones. Wow.
The most played removal was Disarm.
Makes sense.
Yeah, I guess
it's so wide.
Right. Plus of the fact that, you know, you're already down in terms of like being able to plug in as much removal as possible with Bashing Shield and, you know, have consistent access to it. So you might as well go all out for just getting rid of multiple things at once to try to make up the difference. So that makes a lot of sense. One thing I'm actually going to point out in terms of when I was building my deck, with the loss of Sturdy Javelin, that definitely made closing out a couple of games particularly hard. I say that like I didn't make top 4, but there were definitely some matchups where I had to play a bit more unusually and a bit riskier in order to try to clean up certain board states because I didn't have Javelin to go essentially Plasma Burst, Javelin, double tap somebody else, and then get an attack in. Like, I had to rely on essentially Brainstorm, Plasma Burst, which only happened once. So not having that flexibility to leverage my weapon slot into damage on somebody else in certain circumstances definitely affected the strategy a little bit overall.
And without
Ozzy said he was...
Sorry, go ahead.
Ozzy said he was missing Steady Javelin a lot as well in that event.
Yeah. Without Wave 6 and 8, there was literally no other factions. 17 Autobots and 16 Decepticons, and that's it.
Well, to be fair, like, all the mercenaries are in waves 4, 6, and 8. All the Quintessons are in waves 6 and 8.
There is one mercenary in wave 7.
Oh, right, Nightbird. I forget about her.
Yeah, and there's a Art Unicronian in wave 8. I'm sorry, in wave 9. So they existed, but yeah, most all of them were gone.
Yeah, so that was kind of a result of the format.
Yeah.
But yeah, overall, fun event. Again, I was admittedly a bit lazy with deck building, but it ended up paying off somewhat, because double primes, good deck.
Yeah, who would have thought? Let's talk about our main topic of the episode, and the major reason we have Wheeljink here with us today. Wave 10 CNA augmentation was just released into public beta.
Beta time! Woo!
Woo!
So, beta testing, I will mention a couple things here. Every card in the set is available on .cards right now in both the card databases and the downloads tab. So, go print them off, have some fun with them in TTS and Octagon. And there's also a feedback form. We'll drop the link to that in the description. So after you get testing with some of the cards, drop us the feedback. Let us know what you're finding. So that way we can make sure everything is as polished it can possibly be. Additionally, we have an event to go with this.
Yeah, the Bio Beta Bash signups are open right now. It'll start November 14th, just under 2 weeks from now. As usual, it'll start with 5 rounds of Swiss, but then instead it'll be a top 4 cut to a round robin.
Righto. So, in terms of the actual set itself, obviously, this is kind of the big reason we brought Wheeljink on, because he is one of the designers who is principally engaged with this set's creation. So, if you want to give us a brief spiel of kind of how this came to be and kind of what the goals of the set were?
Yeah.
All right. So, the origins of our set, like a lot of people, when the game went down, we mourned for a bit and then started making our own cards. So, I guess probably about half the set was made in that initial stage following the cancellation of the game.
So in some form or matter, the set's been in development now for 4 years, you could say, right?
Yeah. Yeah, a lot of the stuff is very old designs at this point. Surprisingly, very little change on a lot of them as well, which is good to see.
Right, and that has been through literal hundreds of games of testing. When looking through all the statistics on our end in the database we have behind the scenes on .cards, like, everything has pretty hefty testing, very detailed notes about what's going on with it, and all changes were very thoroughly vetted to ensure that, again, they were the correct way to go with things. So this was very thoroughly tested.
Yeah, to give a little behind the scenes, this was our first set where we kind of heavily relied on our website on the developer side now tracks results when using beta cards. And this was one of the first sets we kind of heavily relied on that too. Right. We can see exactly how many are holding up.
Right. We did use it a bit with Wave 9, but that came in kind of midway through the development there. So this was really the first set where once it was our primary focus, with everything, the site was there pretty much from the get-go to get this thing rolling and kind of track where everything was at overall. So that was fun. In terms of some of the stuff in the set, let's talk about some of the particularly fun things that are floating around in here, shall we?
Yeah, so one of my favorite, and I think a fan favorite will be Bob. Bob the Insecticon. I love Bob.
So if you're not familiar with Bob at all, because you're not a lore junkie, for the record, I wasn't, so I had no idea who this little goblin was. But he is essentially an Insecticon who Sunstreaker adopted as a pet at some point in the IDW comics, I believe it was.
Yeah.
Yep.
So He is now in the game as a 4-star Insecticon, but also he's an Autobot. So if anybody's questioning why that's the case, he's never actually really seen with the Insecticons. He's usually hanging around with Sunstreakers, so
Yeah, he's always with their Autobots, so.
Yeah, so he's still an Insecticon, so you still get Swarm, you still get Bug Bomb. You don't get Venom, though, because he actually doesn't cause abilities of your cards to trigger. In testing, he actually originally didn't have that clause, if I'm not mistaken, but Venom ended up being a bit of a problem with him.
Yeah. He was vanilla for a very long time, but we tried testing with Venom, and just pretty much no matter what we did, he was too strong, scrapping 2 cards.
Yeah, we tried really hard to keep him blank, but it just didn't quite work.
Right, and also inadvertently, 2 changes actually prevented him from working with even the score, both the fact that he's an Autobot now, and the fact that, he has the no KO trigger thing that the drones from Wave 8 do, so a couple of things stopping that there. But again, he is an Insecticon, and he's fairly cheap, so he opens up a few more options in that deck. You could use him as, a chump blocker in certain decks as well. He does get all the standard melee tricks as well, so that's particularly fun. So he's a little gremlin, but he's got some interesting potential behind him just because of his weird combination of traits and his faction. So,
yeah. Wiljink, as the resident biggest insect player, what are your thoughts on Bob?
He's fun. He makes for some interesting team compositions. I really enjoy that he makes 4-wide Venom possible. It's a little annoying how oppressive he made it without the inability to trigger him. I do like him as an idea for playing with, just some of the bigger Insecticons like Sergeant Scrapnel and Venom and Wave 2 Bombshell.
Oh yeah, I could see that. I could see that.
Then also coming in the set, we have just a plethora of cassette tapes for Soundwave and Blaster.
Righto, and again, these are all Decepticons, but I mean, we've seen a lot of Squawk Box action with Blaster, so things could very easily go either way. And going down the line, I'll save the most interesting for last. Let's start by talking about Laserbeak. He finally has a cassette form now. Of course, previously the only representation he had was the Spy Patrol version from Wave 3. But now, of course, he's in cassette form, as he should be. And he's got some pretty decent abilities. If he attacks an enemy on fairly low health, he gets to do an extra bit of damage. He gives his leaders focus 1. Obviously, he's a recon thing, or interrogator recon, whatever you want to call it. I say that like it's the same thing, but leaders get focus 1, Decepticon leaders, that is. And then that alt mode is really interesting, being able to snuff out enemy secret actions, just in terms of getting the information, not in terms of actually stopping them like a counter espionage, but definitely some unique text that you can mess around with as a finisher or as a support piece to get around, like an end hostilities or something like that.
Yeah.
And moving down the line,
Overkill and Slugfest, the 2 Dino mini cassettes that Soundwave has.
Yeah.
So Slugfest, this is a design I was kind of curious on. So if you don't mind explaining, like, kind of what guided this form where he's focused around planning.
So Ozzy noticed that a lot of the Transformers that are related to solar power and the sun are like manipulating the hand, drawing cards, and planning. Snarls, obviously a pretty good example, but like Sunstorm, Crankcase also have a similar theme. So we did a similar thing with Slugfest.
So I'm assuming somewhere in the wall. Sorry, go ahead.
At one stage, he did get benefits for planning. He got +1 attack and +1 defense every time you put a card on top.
Ooh.
But we realized pretty quickly that was kind of insane, so that got removed. But yeah, he's still just solid.
Yeah, so I'm guessing then in lore that Slugfest, is related to like solar power in some capacity.
Yeah, from memory, I think his data storage had something to do with solar power.
Okay.
Slugfest.
Yeah, that's an interesting little theme.
Oh, his lasers.
Yeah, that's an interesting little sub-theme I'll keep an eye out for in the future. I genuinely never noticed that.
Yeah, me neither. Neat.
And then as for Overkill, kind of fits the name, because if he defends against a melee character, he bites him for a damage. If he attacks a damaged enemy with 3 or less health remaining, he gets bold 2. And then when you flip him to cassette mode, you do a damage to him and 1 damage to an enemy. So potential with some melee shenanigans there, like brutal conditioning. Imagine brutal conditioning on it. Imagine if Overkill ends up becoming a prime brutal conditioning target. That would be hilarious.
For what it's worth, Overkill is probably my favorite little cassette tape. Like,
yeah, like honestly, like on his own, like I think he fits into that category of Ravage, of just being a generically good 5-star attacker. Of course, there is some decision points to be had, because sometimes you're going to want to throw him out early to get that extra ping damage against melee characters, but other times you're going to want to hold him back in order to retain that extra bolt. So you got to try to set up the board to take advantage of everything as best you can. So some interesting play strategies there that I'm really excited to look forward to. And plus, of all the cassettes, I think Overkill is going to have the best chance of slotting into blaster decks, because those tend to be a bit more aggro compared to Soundwave. Not like Soundwave doesn't play aggro, but Blaster definitely historically has more consistently been the aggro deck, so Overkill would fit right in with what's going on there.
And then our last cassette is Enemy.
Oh yeah, so this is he's a bit of a weirdo. So alt mode, when you flip to it, you move 2 damage from this to one of your characters that has 10 stars or more. There is actually another card in the set that I think that ability could be pretty decent with, in terms of juicing someone up. Of course, you can't use them with Ransack, which it makes me very sad. Why do you do this to me? But still a good time. And then bot mode, correct me if I'm wrong on this, but in the lore, like, Enemy is just he's just a goblin who's just like running around in your face, very much like what's its face, Navi from Ocarina of Time, where it's just constantly annoying the crap out of you.
Yeah, Enemy, like his name suggests, everyone absolutely hates him, even his allies.
So as a result, he has Brave. And he has a really interesting ability that replaces the text on your opponent's card, on some of your opponent's cards, to specifically target Enemy. I will make a note on this, though. The exact verbiage of it: replace the text to an enemy, period. You have to catch the period in the text. If the period is not next to enemy, it does not get affected by this. I'm just making this clear now, because there were a lot of debates during development as to whether that would be confusing or not. Just be aware of that. If a card, like, for example, Marksmanship would not be redirected by enemy, but like Plasma Burst Zap would. So just keep an eye out on that if you're testing things. I think a grand total of like 20-something battle cards can be affected by him. The character count, I'm not 100% sure on at the moment, but there's a decent amount of stuff that pops up pretty frequently that will be affected by enemy. But again, just watch out for the period thing.
Yeah.
General rule of thumb: if it targets something specific, it probably won't be redirected by enemy. But if it can go pretty much anywhere, enemy's probably going to redirect it.
Righto. And then we have what I think is going to be a pretty instant fan favorite out of Wave 10, and that is
our flagship character,
Broadside. So he's finally in the game. I'm gonna mention this now. I kind of sort of spoiled this on the community Discord for months now, because a lot of the figures I've been collecting are characters that may or may not be in the works. And I got a Broadside at Toronto last year, so just saying, keep an eye on what I'm buying, otherwise you might miss something that might get thrown in. But anyways, so Broadside is a triple changer, and he's actually our first Titan-sized triple changer, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, and programmingly, what a hectic problem that's been, but well worth it.
Yeah, so again, 3 modes. His jet mode is where he starts. It's a 617-2 with Wrecker, Plane, and Range. When you flip to it, you get to move a damage. Pretty standard plane stuff. His bot mode is also on the same side as his alt 1 mode, so his 2 alt modes are not on the same side. You'll see why in a moment. But his bot mode is Wrecker and Melee. 7/17/3. And when you flip to the mode, he gets Pierce 3 until end of turn. So a bit of a more traditional blue character, kind of along the lines of OPBL or Nemesis, where he just hits really hard, has a decent defense value, all around good, just general attacker, though he does only get that Pierce for 1 turn. So you got to keep flipping if you want to keep doing things. And then you get the boat mode, which is Titan-sized. That's the reason that the Alt 2 is not on the other side, because the fact that mass shifting is a thing, and you want to, have it represented that, he's a giant boat. So he's a specialist in this mode. He also has the boat and wrecker traits, obviously. He's a 4/17 variable in this mode, and his defense is equal to the number of boats, helicopters, and planes you have on the field. Basically, how much of a supporting fleet you have with him determines how good of a defender he is. Now, of course, there aren't a whole lot of boats right now, but there's a decent amount of small planes and helicopters floating around that you can mess around with to buff up his defense. You can only, I think, get 3 at the moment if you do, I think, Vortex and the 2 4-star ASPs, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, or you can run Paraglide or the Tidal Wave aircraft carrier and put one of those characters under him.
Oh yeah, so there's a fun use for Tidal Wave that hasn't been really seen before. And then, of course, we already talked about his main ability, but he has a station in this mode. It gives +1 defense. You have to be 12 stars or less to take it, and you have to be in alt mode. And when a helicopter or plane goes into the station, you repair a damage from it, so it lands on the deck and gets some refueling or, repairs or whatever. And then when a plane takes off from the station and leaves it, you do 1 damage to an enemy. So basically designed to quickly spit out fighters in order to go for strafing runs. You can repair your guys on it. Overall, a very fun thematic ability. And again, all of the stations on the Junkions feel really nice in terms of, that scene from the movie where they're transforming and then jumping onto each other. This is another one of those stations that's really up there in terms of you can feel the thematics as you're using it, where you're landing on it, you're refueling, and then taking off again and going for another strafing run. So a lot of fun. If you want to talk more about kind of how the entirety of Broadside came to be.
All right, so Broadside's among our oldest designs. He's been in the works since about the end of the Wave 5 and cancellation of the game. And he hasn't changed a whole lot in himself. The boat mode's probably been the most variable, but that bolt mode ability was on there from day one. The plane mode ability used to move 2 damage at one stage when he was a bigger character. But yeah, after the release of Wave 8, we decided to make his boat mode have a station because it would fit thematically, and he's been that way ever since.
Yeah, and again, this is the kind of stuff that the station mechanic really supports, just kind of getting that flavor of, okay, I'm hopping into this to do some specific thing and then getting out of there again to go back into the action. This is, to me, the quintessential station. If somebody asks, what are stations for? You point to this, say, you're landing on the carrier, you're taking off from the carrier.
Yep.
Yeah. And again, because I love to share a little behind-the-scene info, this was going to be a Wave 11 card, but when we moved and swapped in an 11 so that CNA is coming first, we wanted to keep this and get this out sooner because we're all just a really big fan of it.
Right, and actually, I can comment a bit more about this because the story's a bit more complicated than that. So when CNA was originally Wave 11, and that initial order had been established, Broadside was actually in CNA at the time, but we ended up moving him up to what is now Wave 11, but at the time was Wave 10. And he was going to fit because he really fit the theme of that set. But then when we did the swap, we realized that a lot of the boat support in this set that they had developed, they being Ozzy and Wheeljank, was in the set, and it would have felt weird to release Broadside after that had all released. So we moved him back into Wave 10, back into CNA. So he's actually technically back where he originally started after a bit of a game of hopscotch between the two sets.
Yeah.
What other cards have your guys' attention?
I know there's a few cards I really wanted to discuss.
Absolutely.
The first of them being a couple of stratagems. First up is Mortar Cannon for Outback. It turns him from a melee draw engine into a range support piece, again, really shines the concept of or what stratagems are capable of, just taking a minor or just a part of a character and completely flipping it on its head or just rewriting it entirely to be something completely unique. Like, I am definitely going to be trying this at some point in certain truck builds, or even just like in Primus tank, or just tank decks in general. Like, I feel like he could slot in there pretty easy. Because is Outback 6 or 7 stars? I can't remember.
He's 6 stars to start with, 7 with the strat.
So there actually might be some blue tank builds that could take advantage of this, plus half-track trickery and some other weird shenanigans to be had. But yeah, just being able to choose whether or not you want to have a draw engine or a damage engine is fun. Plus, of course, you could just slap this in the sideboard and change that mid-game. So that's a lot of fun. And while I'm on the subject of stratagems, obnoxiousness is pretty funny, because Ape Face has been notoriously one of the weirdest and most unfortunate triple changers, just because like he's a sequential triple changer, but that's kind of not really what triple changers want to be doing. They want to be flipping back and forth between all their modes. This makes it a bit more appealing of a concept because it replaces all 3 of his keywords with a press. So in his beginning mode, he gets a press 1. In his guerrilla mode, he gets a press 2. In bot mode, he gets a press 3. So as you attack him, he becomes slightly harder and harder to kill. So that is a lot of fun in terms of just, essentially getting more and more angry and just becoming harder to shoot down eventually. So I really like that concept. And then finally, I mentioned Sturdy Javelin earlier in the episode, but that was just kind of a one-off card in terms of what it did compared to a lot of other things that supported the 3 core traits of melee range specialist. But there are a pair of battle cards in the set that sort of complete a cycle with Sturdy Javelin in Surveillance Array and Diagnostic Drone. The latter giving specialists extra health and allowing you to repair damage from your characters if it's on a melee guy. And then Surveillance Array giving focus to ranged characters and giving specialists some extra card draw as well. So a couple of variable options there in the vein of Sturdy Javelin. And I'm really excited to see like where they're able to slot in just in general. Because again, these multi-function cards are always a blast to mess around with.
What are you looking forward to? Anything else, Will Jank?
I think the Darkspark is probably a really big one.
Oh, yeah. So that is essentially a reverse matrix for Decepticons. So it gives all your Decepticons +1 defense, and then everybody but the guy that Darkspark is on -1 pierce against it. So that's going to be a lot of fun for like tank decks that are taking advantage of any sort of Megatron variant, because they'll have a bit more pierce resistance. Soundwave is a leader, I believe, so his cassettes could get a bit of pierce resistance as well. There's a decent amount of options for this on the table, or like Shockwave being able to insulate his buddies a little bit.
Yeah, it's definitely an interesting card, and I don't think it's as powerful as Matrix, but it's definitely a useful tool for Decepticon decks.
For sure. And then Z, were there any cards that you were looking forward to?
I think I'm just happy to get this set out. There's not like a specific battle card or stratagem I'm looking forward to. Like I mentioned, I'm probably the most excited for Bob.
Bob.
Yeah.
Bob.
Yeah, for sure. And again, I've mentioned this at like TF cons in the past, but we've been trying to make sure that we have a consistent release pace going to balance between putting out quality stuff and making sure that the community has new things to sink their teeth into. And this, I believe, is going to be the start of getting into that cycle. So we're really happy with where everything is at right now, and we're looking forward to getting this beta through and through and collecting what data we need to finalize everything for certain, and then getting this out so people have new things to seek, like I said, sink their teeth into.
Yeah, and for reference, we're aiming for a mid-December release. I really would like to get out before the year ends.
Correct. That is, I will say, contingent on how the beta bash goes. If testing outside of it is showing all systems go, and the beta bash is not showing anything like really concerning, then everything should be good to go by mid-December. But if issues start cropping up in various places, we may have to push back to at some point early to mid-January. So As always, with release dates on our end, always subject to change. But for now, that is what we're shooting for.
Yeah. And speaking of the beta bash, again, signups are currently open on Transformers.cards. You'll see the link on the top of the page.
Go play these cards.
Yes, exactly.
Excited
Go
to
play,
see other
play
people.
these cards or you're on the naughty list.
Excited to see what people come up with that we have missed.
Yeah, because there's always at least something, right? So, really
Yeah.
curious.
Like, we've been testing it for 4 years, but always good to see what new minds and perspectives bring to the table.
So what are the odds that mortar cannon gets broken?
I don't know how much you're going to play it.
I honestly don't know, but again, like that one is just really exciting me for some reason.
Another thing I'll mention here that this is news to you guys as well. In addition to the beta bash, I will also be running a King of the Hill event. It'll last for 1 week. There'll be a list. You sign up and kind of just schedule a match with the current king. If the king goes 48 hours without playing a match, the next person in line becomes king. And in order to be king, you have to have beta cards in your deck.
Oh, that's fun. Oh, that's going to be
That way,
interesting.
if we can see if someone stays king for a long time, we'll know, hey, let's take a look at that.
Yes. Okay. So basically so at that point, the beta bash is going to be just a general get an overview of the field. And then the King of the Hill can be like, okay, somebody try your best to stay on top as long as possible. Let's see if we can really stress test this and just put as much torque on it as possible.
Exactly.
I like that. And
like I said, that'll go for a week.
Righto. And hey, maybe we could have multiple matches in the same night. That would just be chaos. That'd be a fun stream.
If we can just get some people on, right?
Right.
Turn through matches. But if not, again, we are an international community. We have jobs and families. So
and piles of shame.
Exactly. So we'll give people 2 days to get a match in before they lose their position.
Righto.
That's it for this episode. Next episode will be the last episode of the year. We'll have further talk on Wave 10 and talk about the current beta bash that'll be ongoing at the time.
As always, if you have any comments, suggestions, hot takes that you want to throw our way, drop them in the comments below, or you can submit them anonymous over at Transformers.cards/aliveon1, which that link I think should be on screen right now. We're happy to talk about basically anything related to the game, so if you got a hot take about how, like, I don't know, Wave 2 Bombshell is the most broken character in the game, send it our way. We'll discuss it. Maybe we'll deck build live on an episode and try to figure out how to break this thing. I don't know.
Or even if you just think Bob is just the cutest little boy, let us know.
He is adorable. So,
Wheeljank, thanks for coming on and talking Wave 10 with us.
Thanks for having me.
Till next time, everyone. Toodles.
peace out, y'all.